And bam!
What's
Hello,
up?
everybody.
How y'all doing?
Welcome.
Welcome. All right, let's wait a few minutes while everybody's signing on. Just want to tell everybody hi. Thank y'all for joining on.
We're always glad to have y'all aboard. This is so much fun. We love these Tuesday webinars.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So welcome to the truth about inflammation. We're just going to wait a few minutes while it's all joining up. And I just want to thank everybody for joining on. Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing out there? All right. So welcome to, let's get started. All right. Welcome to the truth about inflammation. Good evening, everybody. So hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's session. For those of you who don't know us, we're Chiropractic Health Center and Hannan Wellness, and we've been serving the New Orleans area for over 35 years. And this is Dr. Debbi Hannan, and she's presenting tonight. So listen, y'all, to show y'all know there's a recorded version tonight, so it'll be available and emailed to you next week. And so if anybody's registered, they're going to get an email with the video link, and you can share it with your friends and family. Also, we love to hear from you. So tonight, if you have questions during this webinar, you can email them in to info@hannanwellness.com, or you can text them to my cell phone, 504-237-5391, and I will answer them, all the questions at the end of the session. So if a question pops up in your head while she's going on a webinar, because you know she's going to roll right through this, you just text that question or email me a question. And I just want to once again thank everybody. We'll answer those questions at the end of the webinar. Thank you for joining us. And for now, the truth about inflammation.
All right, y'all. So hello. And I'm glad everybody is joining us tonight. You know, since I'm in the field of chiropractic, inflammation and its processes are really part of my regular daily routine, but they're also a significant part of my functional medicine and nutritional work that I do regularly with patients as well. And when you think about inflammation is really a normal process that's triggered by our body's immune system. So when we're exposed to irritants or toxicants or pathogens, or when there's tissue destruction, the immune system quickly responds, it reacts, and it does so to begin the healing process. And we're familiar with this response because we've all had a cut, which I actually have right now, on my finger. Ouch. And when we have those situations like that, we'll have some pain or some redness or some swelling as that inflammatory process is started to begin the healing. So this protective inflammatory process, which is initiated to remove initial exposure to begin tissue healing, would be something that we would expect when we were exposed to, for instance, a virus like that, which is causing the COVID-19 pandemic. However, if our body's response, if our immune response is impaired, and this could easily happen through genetic variances or even through lifestyle choices like smoking or perhaps vaping, or certain medications, or possibly certain pre-existing conditions or comorbidities associated with inflammation, like type 2 diabetes or obesity or heart disease. And if any of these things impair that normal immune or inflammatory protective response, then the virus could propagate and cause a significant amount of inflammation through massive tissue destruction. And the damaged cells can increase even more inflammation. And this increase of inflammation occurs through macrophages and granulocytes. And then you get this like inflammation in mass which can create what's called a cytokine storm. And this is a massive production of inflammatory agents or cytokines like interleukin 1 or TNF alpha. And this can create a real problem in the body, where the body then doesn't heal, but it falls into a destructive pathway. So, this is just a thought, because this pandemic is real. And it is a perfect time for us to be talking about this topic and to be considering our ways and considering our lives and considering whether or not we're in a good position of health. So when it comes to inflammation, there is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the good would be what I've already mentioned. It would be that first line of defense that the body begins in order to start healing. And this process is really called acute inflammation. The bad would be additional things that would cause a long-term inflammation for prolonged period, like months or years. Inflamed joints that go on and on for periods of time, poor gut health that can create low-grade inflammation that goes on and on, food sensitivities, exposure to certain agents. The list really can get quite long. And then the ugly would be chronic or impaired inflammation that can cause several diseases, or can worsen situations like this COVID-19. So let's take a deeper look into this chronic inflammation. The World Health Organization suggests that chronic inflammation really results from 4 particular causes. One of them is when the body just fails to eliminate that which is eliciting the acute inflammation, like an infectious agent or a toxin. A second would be a continual external exposure to a low level of a specific irritant, like a chemical that's not a limited, maybe something that we live close to that's emitted, that's a chemical emission, for instance. The third is a real growing concern in the United States, and that's autoimmune disorders. And this is where the body actually, the immune system actually perpetually attacks healthy tissue. And the fourth way would be through biochemical inducers. And those biochemical inducers lead to oxidative stress, which can cause mitochondrial dysfunction and a production of a lot of free radicals. So an inducer is a molecule that regulates gene expression. And it most often works by disabling what's called the gene repressors. So the gene that would keep the chemical or the molecule that would keep a gene, like an inflammatory gene, from expressing itself can be bound by the inducer, and when it binds to the gene repressor, then the gene really expresses itself greatly. And that's something that we're seeing in COVID-19, that an inducer is causing this hurricane of pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin 1 and TNF alpha and interleukin 6 and interleukin 2, just to name a few. So the World Health Organization ranks chronic disease as the greatest threat to human health. And there's years of research that conclude that chronic inflammation in chronic inflammatory diseases are the most significant cause of death in the entire world. So that really should get our attention to say, how can we as individuals reduce inflammation in our body? Symptoms of chronic inflammation are varied, but they can include things like body pain, constant fatigue and insomnia, depression, anxiety, mood disorders, GI complications like constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, frequent infections, rashes, and mouth sores are all things that years of research have identified as common signs and symptoms of chronic inflammation. And then there's a number of conditions or diseases that have been attributed to chronic inflammation. And those diseases would include asthma, cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or dementia, type 2 diabetes, obesity, periodontitis, rheumatoid arthritis. Those are all amongst that list. Now, numerous risk factors have been identified that promote a low-level inflammatory response. And these risk factors include things like age. When our age increases, the research shows that an increasing age is associated with elevated levels of inflammatory molecules. It would also include obesity. It would include smoking or a standard American diet, low sex hormones, stress, and sleep disturbances. So, this is really a wake-up call to us all. If we're younger, maybe that would cause us to think about the choices that we're making, and it might cause us to embrace choices that provide better outcomes as we age. And for the maturing population like myself, it really motivates us to conquer our choices finally, and to understand that we all still have the power to change our current health status. And I think that's what's really most important. No matter what age or stage we are, we all have the power to make changes that are going to create better outcomes. So let's look at that list again: age, obesity, smoking, the standard American diet, low sex hormones, stress, and sleep disturbances. And my question is, what do many of these things have in common? And the answer to that would be lifestyle choices. Many of these things are lifestyle choices which are alterable. And that is the good news. The good news is that these risk factors are controllable through lifestyle changes. So I really want to spend the remainder of this time together discussing ways that we can prevent chronic inflammation. So Darren and I listened to a anti-aging lecture a few years back. And during that last lecture, the man that was giving it suggested that there were three very powerful lifestyle influencers. And he basically made the case that these three powerful lifestyle influencers had the ability to enhance one's health far more than any available drug on the market. And that right there gets your attention. But the information really had been available and has been available for years. And one of the studies that could be quoted is the EPIC study that was done in 2009. And that study suggested that a medicine could eliminate 80% of chronic disease and the resulting premature aging with a handful of modifiable behaviors. And those modifiable behaviors could be remembered by three words: fingers, fork, and feet. So the fingers, fork, and feet would represent stop smoking or vaping, eat well, and exercise. In changing these behaviors, or the behaviors behind these three things, if we do that, bam, we have major impact on our health.
I like that.
That's powerful.
Bam.
Powerful. That's Darren's favorite words. This information actually repeats itself in literature over and over again. We can eliminate 80% of chronic disease and premature aging by changing the behaviors behind smoking, eating, and exercising.
That's awesome.
That is awesome, and that is really inspiring. Now, don't get me wrong, genes play a role. And, you know, they're not the important role that many people think they are. I like to say it this way to my patients: you don't have to have what your parents have. For example, my genetic results show that I am at risk for obesity and type 2 diabetes. However, I don't have to sign for this, for these UPS packages, is the way that I like to say it. So let me explain to you what I explain to my patients. Genes are kind of like Oscar on Sesame Street.
The grouch.
He's the one that lives in the garbage can. And if the lid is kept on the garbage can, we never see that red Oscar. But if the lid is removed from the can, then he manifests. So let's just say that Oscar is a bad gene. Our lifestyle choices can actually keep the lid on that bad gene so that that bad gene never manifests. And that's the power that lifestyle has over genes. Diet and lifestyle are very powerful genetic modifiers. So scientists used to think that if the human genome was deciphered, they would unlock the source of disease origin. But instead, they found that the primary driver of chronic disease is really the interaction between genes, food, and environment. And that would go along with lifestyle that includes the way that we think. And that's why we've added BrainTap to the health technologies that we offer. So in each of these areas that I'm referring to, it's really important that we bridge the gap between what we know to be true and what we do about it as a result. And I think that's so important. I want to say it again. We have to be not only hearers, but we have to be doers. So we really need to learn, especially in light of what is happening in our society today. Will we be ready for the next pandemic if another one comes? We can make ourselves more ready by improving our health. And we can improve our health by bridging the gap between what we know to be true and what we choose to do as a result.
That's powerful.
So again, I want to remind us that smoking is a significant contributor to inflammation. And it's a lifestyle choice that's really controllable. Cigarette smoking is associated with decreasing the production of anti-inflammatory molecules in our body. It's also associated with increasing inducers that increase inflammation. So maybe it's time to have a discussion with a professional that you know for help to quit. Our breakfast, lunch, and dinner have more impact on our health than our DNA or our dietary choices, do. I think I need to say that again. I said that backwards. Our breakfast, lunch, and dinner have more impact on our health than our DNA. Our dietary choices can either push us towards health or away from health towards disease. And they do that by turning on and off genes. So we really need to evaluate what's in our refrigerators, in our cupboards. And that's one of the best ways that we can conquer and confront what we're doing on a daily basis regarding dietary habits and identify what's needed to help make changes to reduce inflammation. So for instance, an anti-inflammatory diet would be, and it would be important to both stop the bad stuff and eat the good stuff. And there's really no single food that will boost a person's health, but a variety of healthful ingredients can really make a difference. So it would be important to get rid of the trans fats. It's also important to really completely understand the balance of omega-6s and omega-3s. And that's a whole nother topic, but our omega-6s to 3s really should be 1-to-1, or possibly at most 2 6s to 1 3s. And omega-6s primarily are very pro-inflammatory to the body. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. So we really need to get a grip on that balance. It's also important to eat a rainbow every day. A colorful plate is full of phytonutrients. And when I say a colorful plate, I mean lots of vegetables and some fruits. Fiber is important. You know, a high intake of both dietary soluble and insoluble fiber is associated with lowering substances that cause inflammation. Green and black teas have polyphenols in them that will lower hsCRP levels, which are related to inflammation. There's supplements or use of things like turmeric or curcumin, ginger. We use a lot of fresh ginger in our cooking. Things like taking a good dietary supplement. Magnesium is very related to anti-inflammatory patterns in the body, yet the population as a whole is suboptimal in this area. It's also important that we have good nuts and seeds without bad oils. I suggest people get dry roasted nuts and seeds, and don't ruin a good food with a bad oil like sunflower or safflower or soybean that's so prominent in packaged foods.
I was shocked a few years back when we did the test for the omega-3 to omega-6. I thought for sure I was doing pretty good in that area since we supplemented with O3s. And when I got my test back, I was 1 to 12 instead of 1 to 2. I was 1 to 12, and I was eating pretty healthy at the time. So I was shocked that if that was me, what was the average American ratio, like 1 to 24 or something.
And we test people regularly, and I see people that are like 25 6s to 1 3s, you know, that. But when you focus on it, and once we focused, we switched Darren around to where he was 2 6s to 1 3s, or 1 to 2 3s to 6. So you know, it takes a little bit of time, but the change can be made. And I think that's one of the good things about fats. If we quit the bad fats and we start including the good fats, we'll change the fats. And fats are really important to our body. Our cell membranes are made of fats. Our brain is made of fats, and fats really regulate pathways biochemically that either promote or kind of stop inflammation. So another excellent anti-inflammatory diet is the Mediterranean diet. And a lot of studies have shown that the Mediterranean diet is associated with weight loss and reduced risk of heart disease, reduced risk of strokes, type 2 diabetes, and premature death. So a resource that I like, you can find at helpguide.org. And it's a nice resource on the Mediterranean diet, just to kind of give you some boundaries of the Mediterranean, what would a Mediterranean diet would look like. When it comes to reducing inflammation in the body, again, it's not just about the foods that we choose to eat, it's about the foods that we push away or choose not to eat. And for some people, food sensitivities are important here. a lot of the population has sensitivities, not necessarily allergies, but sensitivities to foods like dairy, wheat, and gluten. And it's important to understand if your body is affected here. So if you have gut symptoms, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, on a regular basis, you know, this needs to be figured out if there are foods that are creating issues for you, and you might need to consult with a professional to help.
Yeah, like me. That's what I tell my clients. I tell my guys, if your belly bigger than your butt, you got to come see me because you need help.
Yeah, but we'll probably be getting into factors that are going to help solve that if you just listen and apply to what we teach you. But, you know, it is important that we avoid things like refined carbs, white sugars, cookie, cakes, donuts, pasta, white crackers, pastries, you know, white bread, French fries, other fried foods. Here in Louisiana, fried seafood is a fave, but it's really not good for your body. It's also good to push away things like sodas and other sugary drinks and really consider what you are drinking. A lot of times people are taking in drinks on the side, not even calling that food, but yet they're loaded with sugar and unnecessary carbohydrates, which actually steal good nutrients from the body and make you hungrier. Red meat and processed meats and like hot dogs and bacon, sausage, and I say red meat, an excessive amount of red meat. We actually like grass-fed red meat, but don't eat it every day. Things like margarine, shortening, lard, those things should go. Low glycemic diet is another diet that can help keep inflammation in check. And the low glycemic diet is basically based on the glycemic index of food, which is how that food affects the blood sugar, how quickly it rises the blood sugar. The lower the number, the better the food. So a low glycemic diet would be foods that were less than 55. A medium glycemic 55 to 69, and a high glycemic would be 70 and plus. And studies show that a low glycemic diet or a low glycemic index diet may help with conditions like reducing blood sugar levels, helping people lose weight, help people reduce the risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. So what does a low glycemic index diet look like? I'm going to give you another resource that I think is great. It's Harvard Health Publishing, and it's called 8 Principles of Low Glycemic Eating. And I think that that is a really good resource to help you figure out how to eat a low glycemic index diet. So another key to reduce inflammation would be to get moving. Exercise is an essential step. And I would suggest that you try to participate in 30 to 45 minutes of aerobic exercise and maybe 10 to 25 minutes of resistance training at least 4 to 5 times a week. And remember, when it comes to aerobic exercise, that studies show that you literally can do 5 or 10 minutes of exercise, and you could do that 3 or 6 times throughout the day and count it for 30 minutes, depending on how much you're doing in a segment. So you can do many segments throughout the day and count it as a total amount of exercise. So another topic of importance, of course, is stress. Stress signals the body to produce hormonal responses that create a reaction called the fight or flight response. And that response, of course, is protective in nature, and it's a mechanism that's designed to alert us. But the problem is that many people don't just get that for that alert. They actually live in that place on a daily basis. So chronic stress really creates a lot of stress-related hormones that just constantly are moving through the bloodstream. And by doing so, they create a lot of inflammation. So it is important that we learn to manage our stress. And there's a lot of techniques for managing stress, like, you know, walking or other forms of exercise, stretch class, Pilates, prayer, meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, journaling, deep breathing. We really suggest people get outside, plant your feet in the ground. You know, it's important to build your own habits here based on really what seems right for you. But you need to really identify stress relievers for you.
A lot of patients and a lot of clients come to the clinic to do brain tap just for that.
Yeah, the brain tap protocol is really awesome, and
I
we have a lot of awesome testimonies, and we've really also seen a lot of high type A dominant type people really calm down, you know, and yep, the sauna is awesome as well. So sleep also matters. Getting restful sleep every night is essential to combating inflammation. And while we sleep, our body performs key healing and restorative processes. The average adult actually needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. So my question is, are you getting enough? You know, if you wake up feeling tired or sluggish or kind of ornery during the day, you get ornery, you might need a little bit more sleep. And if you have difficulty getting or staying to sleep, you might need to develop a nighttime routine to help your body. And that might include things like avoid eating or drinking caffeinated beverages after a certain point of time in the day. Avoid electronics or bright screens before bed. Dim the lights in the house at night. As the light goes down outside, turn your lights down inside. You might consider having blackout shades. Amber lenses for computers or amber screens for computers can be bought to put on at nighttime so that you're not getting all that blue light, which is so awakening. And
yeah, turn off the cell phones.
Turn off the cell phones. You know, blue light inhibits our melatonin production, which should kind of begin to ramp up at nighttime, but it doesn't do so in the presence of that bright light.
All those HD screens, the cell phones, the iPads, the computer screens, they all tell your brain that the sun's coming up.
Yeah, that's right. So what's the best routine for each individual is possibly a little different. But again, what's most important is to find yours. And I think it's also important to clear your mind before bed and make sure that your room is cold. Everybody sleeps better when the room is cold. So additional considerations, again, we mentioned earlier, it's important to have good hormone balances. And if you suspect that you have a hormone imbalance, this can be evaluated and should be evaluated. Remember that guys that have large bellies often have low testosterone. And really the best solution here is to lose the belly. A male that has a large belly and has low testosterone has an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And, you know, it's really a problem, the large belly. And that is because the belly itself becomes an endocrine organ. And the belly produces an enzyme called aromatase. And that enzyme is the only enzyme that will convert both the testosterone in men and women to estrogen. So a guy can be losing his testosterone because his belly is producing aromatase and then he's increasing his estrogen. So you can begin to see why it would make no sense whatsoever for a gentleman with a large belly to go get external testosterone so that he loses that to even more estrogen, putting him even at greater risk for prostate or breast cancer.
Wow.
So it is important to correct the low testosterone, but the foundation of that correction should be begun with diet and exercise, and then be measured to see the impact that that's making before exogenous supplementation is administered. So think about getting your hormones. And for females, I also believe that hormones need to be regulated with aging. Of course, there is good research that suggests that it's probably not best to use synthetic hormones, but really better to be evaluated for bioidentical hormone replacement. So for further learning tonight, you can Google the National Institute of Health and just put in your Google chronic inflammation stat pearls, NCBI bookshelf. And this is kind of a nice piece that can kind of help fill in the gaps and also help your understanding get better by repetition for the things that I've said. But I want to remind you that fingers, a fork, and feet are powerful behavioral modification pathways that can ultimately change your health in a very dramatic way. And then if you add to that decreasing your stress, thinking right, sleeping well, and regulating your hormones, you have powerful modifiers. And honestly, if science didn't learn one more thing at this point, if they didn't develop one more new drug, these behavioral modifications and changes can make major impact on your health today and in your future. And remember that you probably are making choices not just for yourself, but also for somebody else. Your life is probably impacting somebody else around you. So by you mastering these choices and this material, it will help not only yourself, but those around you. So again, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And we're going to go ahead and address questions. And before we do that, in case anybody has to leave us, I just want to say again, we love helping people. And we're always happy to work with you to improve any aspect of your health. So if you need any assistance, just give us a call at the clinic at 504-454-2000. It's our privilege and honor to help you. All right, Darren, what do we got in terms of questions?
All right. The first question says, Dr. Hannan, my daughter gets mouth ulcers when stressed and they take a while to go away. Is this a vitamin deficiency of some sort?
Well, mouth ulcers can be related to a number of things. They can be associated with B vitamin loss, which can be associated obviously with stress. Stress steals our B vitamins, but mouth ulcers also sometimes are related, to food sensitivities. So I would definitely want to take a look at that. But the first thing maybe would just be to put her on a B complex. If she was on birth control pills, they also steal her B vitamins. So that might be the first thing I would choose, and then possibly get some help with potential food sensitivities that could be playing a role there.
Awesome. Okay, Dr. Hannan, other than sleeping 7 to 8 hours per night, eating well, no artificial sweeteners, anything else we can do currently with the ongoing pandemic to boost our immune systems?
Well, I've been talking to patients for a while about things that they can do. And as I've been listening to some of the lectures that doctors are doing, I know that the things that we can do at home to boost our immunity are really important, because there is that window between exposure and the first 5 days where there's not many symptoms, but then the next 7 days, there's things that we could do to try to really give our body a boost. And those things would include knowing your vitamin D level. I think and taking vitamin D. It's a very powerful supplement. I really like the liquid form of it. Everybody on this webinar should know what their 25 hydroxy vitamin D level is, and be supplementing. Vitamin C is really important. I love the supplement that we carry called Total Virex. I think that it is just one of the most powerful supplements to help strengthen the body's immune system against viruses. It's really important that bowels are kept moving. Don't get constipated. Make sure you're using a lot of vegetables. Take a probiotic. I love green matcha tea. We've been using the liposomal glutathione or N-acetylcysteine as a precursor to that. That could be helpful. I think that there's some good evidence that melatonin can be helpful. Those are all things that could be done to help boost immunity.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, along with fish oil and curcumin, which we've already mentioned, and ginger as great anti-inflammatory agents.
And I've been telling my clients, it's a great time to keep the sugar low in your diet, because sugar suppresses your immune system too. So it's a good time to eat healthy.
Yeah, definitely get out in the sun, and like Darren said, stay away from excess sugar.
Why am I achy in the morning? Can you recommend how to reduce or reverse that?
Achiness can be a lot of things. My first thought would be, are you drinking enough water? And I would really encourage you to drink like eight ounces of clean filtered water. We like slightly alkaline water. I would also be concerned with, if a person was achy in the morning, are they eating a bad food before bed, or eating a diet that isn't good? And then a easy suggestion might be to consider Epsom salt baths. Epsom salt baths also could be used as an immune booster because of the magnesium that gets absorbed in the body when you're taking that Epsom salt bath. And I guess I should have mentioned on the question a couple of questions ago, we really like the sauna. I think that there's some evidence that heating the body up can help with the immune system as well. So I think that Epsom salt baths, to go back to that question, might be nice to see if that would help reduce the stiffness in the morning, because it is a nice detoxifier.
Farm Fred sauna works too. So, another question. They want to know, they have elbow pain for about 3 years now. Should they be concerned?
Well, absolutely. If there's any joint that is in pain and it's ongoing, I think there is reason for concern, and that should be identified as to the cause and eliminated, treated as best as possible, because long-term low-grade inflammation, it turns chronic, and then that chronic inflammation can turn from the bad to the ugly and create disease. So definitely consider treatment there. We love the low-level laser, but it might not even be something that requires that, but it does need to be figured out.
Awesome. Next patient or client says, I'm a type 2 diabetic. What do I need to do? I'm ready for change.
I love that. I love hearing that a type 2 diabetic is ready for change, because I feel like so many type 2 diabetics feel like they're there and they're stuck there and they have to stay there and just try to keep it from getting worse. Well, I just want to encourage you that diet and lifestyle can bring change in that. area and in that arena. And I believe that it can actually be reversed because I've seen it happen with so many patients. And I can say that the way that most type 2 diabetics are trained to eat is really only perpetuating the problem. It's not really helping to reverse it. So if you're really ready to change, get in touch with us. We'll get you on a program that can help bring change, and we'll work with your doctor to make that possible.
I'm working with a type 2 diabetic right now who's lost 50 pounds in the last 3 months, and his diabetes is going bye-bye.
So it's really making a
He's getting
difference.
better every day.
So we see that in the clinic all the time, where we're working with the endocrinologists or the primary care doctors that might have the patients on sugar regulators or other medications. Blood pressure medication goes with that, cholesterol meds. And we work with the primary care doctors as we're counseling and working with the patients, so that they're making the decisions with the patients about reducing their medications as they get better. So again, you know, I just want to thank everybody for being on tonight. We love connecting with you all. Getting a grip on chronic inflammation or inflammation that is low grade in our bodies is really important for our overall health and for years into the future of a life that is really enjoyable. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
We love you all. Have a great night.
Thank you all for watching everything and joining our webinar. We'll see y'all next month.
All right.
Next month's webinar
is A Path to Health. Mapping out your path to health.
It is.
We'll see you then.
Good night.